Hello, my name is Yupeng Jiao. I just got my PhD in history from University of California, San Diego. I'm currently a postdoc fellow at the Center for East Asian Studies at Stanford University. So I'm giving this presentation for the 2020 Martial Arts Annual Conference, which definitely conducted online. So the topic of my presentation is Wandering Martial Arts Networks and Invulnerability Rituals in Modern China, which is part of my PhD dissertation. So Invulnerability Rituals, it came to be known to the Western society, especially through the Boxer Uprising that took place in 1899 to 1901. So the invulnerability ritual can be defined as the ability to withstand sharp weapons and even modern weapons. So the most famous ones in China include the armor of the Golden Bell, the Zhao, and also the iron closed shirt, the Tiebushan. So both invulnerability rituals were practiced frequently during the Boxer Uprising. So during the Boxer Uprising, the main target of the Boxers was the Western missionaries who went to China in the 19th century. And as a consequence of the Boxer Uprising, the foreign army occupied Beijing, the capital city of the Qing Empire, and then executed a large number of Boxer participants. So that's why the invulnerability ritual came to be very famous in the Western society. But the end of the Boxer definitely not the end of the whole story. So the story continued to exist. The invulnerability ritual continued to exist until the early 1950s, when the Chinese Communist Party came into power and basically eliminated all the local martial art tradition from China. So the project I'm going to present for today is part of my dissertation, and the main location of my study is Poyang County in southern China. So as you can tell from the map, it's the Poyang County was right next to the Poyang Lake, which is the biggest freshwater lake in China, and it's also a really hot spot in terms of the local transportation and economic activities because it's right next to the lake. Uh, so the invulnerability rituals were related to the self-defense groups in rural China, and the self-defense group also gave rise to the Boxer uprisings. So the self-defense groups was basically uh, a response from the local society towards the external threats, especially bandit threats. So during the early 20th century, China, there were rampant bandit activities all around in almost everywhere in China due to the fall of the Qing Empire. China didn't really have a very strong government at the time, and also warlordism. All the warlords from different provinces, different counties, different cities were competing with one another. So the local society was in a totally chaotic situation. That's why there were so many bandits in China, and the Poyang County was doubtlessly a major target of bandit activity because it was the economic center and also the transportation center in the region. And as I mentioned, the government was pretty weak, and there was not enough responsive from the nationalist government to suppress bandit activities. So local people had to find a way to protect themselves. So the solution for them was, the local elites went to other places and invited outside martial art teachers to teach them the invulnerability rituals. So, when after they invited the outside martial art teachers, martial art teachers they established their own martial art societies. The two biggest one in Poyang was called the Yellow Crane Society and the Big Sword Society. So the people who founded these societies in Poyang all from outside. In the case of the Yellow Queen, seven martial art master from Jiangsu province in 1934, and in terms of the Big Sword Society, three martial art master from Anhui province in 1946. So as we can tell from the both case of the Yellow Queen and the Big Sword Society, that the founders of them in Poyang were all from external places. None of the founders were actually local of Poyang. So after they settled down in Poyang, they also started to recruit new martial art teachers at the local level because they need to establish their own community over there. So in the case of the Yellow Korean society, two younger generation martial art teachers emerged as the new generation leaders. One was called Jin Deshan, who's not local at all, who's from Anhui province as a refugee who came to Poyang a few years ago. And then also another person with a nickname, the Lame, who's also from Jiangsu province. He's actually the nephew of one of the seven martial art masters from Jiangsu province. And Jin Deshan and Lame cooperated actively together and established 28 Yellow Korean assembly halls in 7 different districts within Poyang from 1934 to 1949. And in the case of the Big Sword Society, they also established assembly halls, although the exact numbers are unknown to us, in 7 different districts in Poyang. So they were really widespread in Poyang, and hundreds of local residents joined the self-defense group to protect their home from bandit threats. So what attracted people the most in these self-defense groups was invulnerability rituals. So if we trace the history of the invulnerability rituals, it has a strong theatrical performance element in that. So China have a long history of communal opera, which emphasize the importance of martial arts, especially the ability to defend oneself from all kinds of weapons. And also you will see that in the case of Chinese mythology and Taoist and Buddhist exorcism as well. In the case of the Yellow Korean and Big Sword Society in 20th century China, the Yellow Korean require a 49-day training session, and the Big Sword require a 10-day training session of invulnerability rituals, respectively. And such rituals include many different elements, including reciting spells, burning yellow papers and paper talismans, meditation, and also worshiping martial guards and folk religious guards, and of course, regular fighting techniques as well. So you can find a lot of picture about the theatrical performance of invulnerability ritual. You can find them even today. This picture is from early 20th century China. So we as modern scholars, we may tend to believe that the invulnerability ritual were fake and it didn't really work out at all. But to the local people in the early 20th century, they really took the invulnerability ritual seriously. So as one consequence of that, it definitely helped people to organize the local people against systematic bandit threats. So they organized themselves into smaller groups of local militias to fight against bandits. And the people also joined the self-defense group predominantly because the invulnerability rituals, and they firmly believe in the effectiveness of the rituals, and they believe they can really be protected from bandit, from all kinds of weapons, from swords, from spears. So they actually became braver when they fought against the bandits on the battleground. And I can give you one really important and interesting example that one disciple of the self-defense groups recalled later, that if I could master the invulnerability rituals and went to the anti-Japanese front line, becoming a military commander would be as easy as eating desserts and drinking tea. In this case, people believe that by investing in the invulnerability ritual, they can gain fame and wealth through doing that. And also, people in 1949, after the Communist Party came into power, many local people resisted the arrival of the communists briefly through the invulnerability rituals. As we mentioned, the invulnerability rituals and self-defense groups in rural Poyang emerged as a response to external threats, especially bandits. But very immediately after the arrival of the self-defense groups, they turned to internal conflicts within the local community as well. So as a consequence of that, invulnerability rituals significantly intensify the use of violence in resolving local disputes. And self-defense groups, besides fighting against bandits, also frequently got involved in local conflicts rather than defending the community from external threats alone. And as you can imagine, many of the martial art teachers within the self-defense groups were careerists, which means there was a vibrant market of violence and martial arts techniques, especially in vulnerability rituals. When people need violence, need force to reach their personal or the goals of their community, they hire martial art teachers to teach them how to fight and how to practice invulnerability rituals. So there were a growing number of martial art teachers, including former bandits. Right, when the bandits lost their job, many people actually joined the self-defense group and start to learn the invulnerability rituals, and it provided a new career for them after they quit their bandit career. So the invulnerability rituals and self-defense group caused a lot of problems at the local level. So as you can imagine, people at the local level competed with one another for different interests. There are three major conflicts at the local level. One was competition for natural resources, for water, for resources, and also for land and whatever. And there were also lineage conflicts in rural China because the community was mostly organized by surnames, right? And also, what's new in the 20th century was elections when the Nationalist Party came into power after 1911 revolution. So people start to elect their own leaders. In order to compete for elections, there were different political factions, and different political factions would hire martial art teacher to fight against their political enemies to win in the election. So the martial arts specialists within both the Yellow Crane and the Big Society were hired as professional missionary or martial art teachers. They got involved in a lot of kinds of local disputes, local conflicts, and a lot of feuding actually broke out between the Yellow Crane and the Big Sword Society. So the Yellow Crane won't fight against the Yellow Crane. So if one political faction hired the Yellow Crane to fight for them, the other side will hire the Big Sword to fight for them. So the Yellow Crane and the Big Sword actually became enemies in many cases. Uh, so the last phase of the self-defense groups and invulnerability rituals was during 1949 when the Communist Party came into power. So on May 1st of 1949, the Communist Party officially announced the liberation of Poyang, and the Communist Party issued really aggressive green levy policy in rural China, so they need military provision to support their front line. So the local people were really angry about that and labeled the communists as bandits. So they organized a lot of local self-defense groups to rebel against the communists. And the way they rebel definitely through invulnerability rituals. They believe the ritual can protect them from bullets, from modern weapon, but as you can imagine, it definitely failed. So after the rebellion of the local self-defense groups, they the most martial art teachers were executed or jailed, and the self-defense groups and also the invulnerability ritual basically disappeared after the communist suppression. So the conclusion, the flourishing of rural martial arts sects in modern China was largely facilitated by popular belief in invulnerability rituals. So to many people, the physical warfare was not only physical per se, but also it's just a demonic warfare, spiritual warfare, right? So you need to summon the martial guard to help you fight against bandits and also your enemies at the local community. Through the teachings of a nationwide network of wandering martial art teachers, invulnerability rituals were initially used for the purpose of defending rural community against bandits by local self-defense groups. Those wandering martial art masters who preached the effectiveness of practicing invulnerability rituals were careerist teachers who first promoted the use of protective martial arts rituals against bandits and then expanded the use to resolving all local disputes. As we mentioned, competition for natural resources and local elections. The cult of the invulnerability ritual then became one of the most dangerous players which threatened the security of the people's livelihood. And finally, as a consequence of the Communist parties came into power, most of the self-defense groups and invulnerability ritual disappeared in China as a consequence of the Communist Party campaign against counterrevolutionaries. Alright, so my presentation really brief and general about my research. So if you have any questions and if you want to know more about the details, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.